It began in 2010, 2011. That was this first use case of Bitcoin as uncensorable money. There's that famous Satoshi post, WikiLeaks has kicked the hornet's nest and the swarm's coming towards us. And there was an extra legal banking blockade at that time, led by Senator McCain. I think it was a wonderful proof of concept for Bitcoin that not even the most powerful state on the planet could stop WikiLeaks functioning. They were able to continue publishing, even though they were under this immense pressure from the US government. And those revelations embarrassed the CIA immensely. So that's when we really saw this ramping up of these clandestine operations against Julian and against WikiLeaks. We haven't seen a big data leak for some time, but I believe that we will see more.
Archie.
Your brother, Julian Assange, famously through WikiLeaks broke some of the biggest stories of my lifetime. And his work, and probably in combination with Glenn Greenwald's reporting, led to sort of my political awakening. Before that, I wasn't really all that engaged or aware. I was much more concerned about just getting a degree and getting a job. But when that came out, the WikiLeaks, it sort of broke my perception of not only media but world government as well. The fact that Fox News of all the media networks was the first to publish the the collateral damage video, which Fox News famously very conservative, where some of the more liberal leaning outlets did not publish that. They were too afraid to go against, I guess what you might call the deep state or the government, the establishment. Yeah. And so that sort of just broke my whole view of my juvenile view of politics, media, world, governments, all of those things. And I thought, what's going on there? And so I'm deeply grateful for that and his courage in doing that. And I remember, unfortunately, when he was virtually imprisoned in the embassy in London, walking past there with a friend of mine and looking around, and I'm like, I wonder where the police are watching from. Because when you go on the street, it's just like any other street. You don't know that anything is going on, actually. But you don't know whether that woman who looks like someone who's just doing her shopping, coming back from doing her shopping, or that fella standing around looking like a workman having a smoko break, whether or not they're actually, spying.
When he first went into the embassy, it was totally overt. There were, bobbies, these sort of men in their bobby hats and their nightsticks and uniforms all surrounding the embassy. It was very, very overt, the sort of police presence. But over time, that reduced as time went on, and you had this more covert surveillance taking place around the embassy.
There were quite aggressive, surreptitious attempts at infiltrating. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah. So after 2017, when WikiLeaks published the Vault 7 CIA leaks, and those leaks related to a sort of trove of CIA hacking tools that the CIA were using to backdoor people's phones, their televisions, turn their Samsung televisions into listening devices, backdooring cars, ability to turn cars off and on. And those revelations embarrassed the CIA immensely, not just because it was that these tools existed, but that they'd actually lost control of these tools. These tools were out in the wild, and the CIA was keeping that secret. But WikiLeaks revealed that anybody had access to these tools, and they could use these exploits, and it wasn't just from within the CIA. And so that really embarrassed the CIA. And after those leaks were revealed, the phones had to be updated and to sort of stop all these backdoors. And it was at that point that CIA Director Mike Pompeo, in his first speech in 2017, essentially declared a fatwa against Julian and WikiLeaks and said, we're coming after you and we're going to use everything in our power to do that. And they declared WikiLeaks a non-state hostile intelligence agency. And that really opened up what the CIA could do in their intelligence operation against WikiLeaks. Essentially, what that term meant was that there was no longer congressional oversight in their operations against WikiLeaks, and they could go after WikiLeaks and Julian like they would, say, the Russian FSB or the Iranian, secret services. And so that's when we really saw this ramping up of these clandestine operations against Julian and against WikiLeaks. And it was at that point that the Ecuadorian embassy, they had a security firm who was supposed to be protecting Julian while he was inside the embassy. That firm was flipped and became a CIA asset. And so they started surveilling Julian. They installed brand new cameras all throughout the embassy, these high-definition cameras, listening devices all throughout the embassy to spy on Julian's meetings with his lawyers, meetings with his doctors. And interestingly, all these recordings were leaked by people within that security company because what they saw happening went against their morals. And so they took this courageous decision to leak this material. So you can now go online and see these video recordings of, say, Pamela Anderson coming in, visiting Julian within the embassy. And this material was recorded and sent back to the CIA every 15 days. And what else we found out from those leaks was it wasn't just these recordings that were being made, but there were plots to poison Julian that were being spoken about. And those plots were then not only confirmed within these whistleblower documents and emails, but then confirmed by journalists in Washington, D.C., who had sources within the intelligence community, within the Trump administration intelligence community, that said these plots went as high as the CIA director and the national security advisors within the Trump administration.
When was the first threat to his life? Which administration was that under?
So it really began. So it began in 2010, 2011.
Which would have been Obama?
That's right. Yeah. So that's when they first published the material related to Chelsea Manning's leaks. Mm-hmm. So that was Afghanistan war diaries, Iraq war logs. These documents that really revealed what was going on in these wars, the amount of civilian deaths that were being lied about, and the Guantanamo Bay detainee files showing that there were 14-year-olds being tortured in Guantanamo Bay, and then these diplomatic cables, 250,000 diplomatic cables, all part of this huge leak, which included the collateral murder video, that video that documents a helicopter gunship mowing down Reuters journalists. And it was after that leak that the US government really started to go after WikiLeaks. And there was an extra legal banking blockade at that time led by Senator McCain. And they closed Julian's bank accounts. His personal bank accounts were all shut down. They stopped Visa and MasterCard donations to WikiLeaks. They shut down WikiLeaks' PayPal. And it was at that time that WikiLeaks turned to Bitcoin, right, to accept donations and its operating currency. So it was his first use cases of Bitcoin as uncensorable money. They were able to continue publishing, even though they were under this immense pressure from the US government.
Satoshi was still active around then, and he was not so keen to see that continue. And he didn't think it would have been, at that early stage, was quite healthy for Bitcoin to become a target of the government at the time. Like, what was going on around then? What did you guys think about that at the time when Satoshi came out and said, maybe don't use Bitcoin because it's too young? Yeah,
well, there was a lot of, I think, I wasn't really involved, back then, but there was some discussion on the forum, some forum discussion around that time, and Julian actually waited 6 months until they opened up the donations for Bitcoin. And then, there's that famous Satoshi post, WikiLeaks has kicked the hornet's nest and the swarm's coming towards us. Yeah. So I think it was a wonderful, proof of concept for Bitcoin, that not even the most powerful state on the planet could stop donations to WikiLeaks, could stop WikiLeaks functioning using this fledgling currency, or this new money, this new electronic money,
payment network, currency, exactly. all in one. Oh, I wanted to ask you about whistleblowers, because one of the arguments people, typically defenders of the state, will say, against conspiracy theories is that, oh, no, there would have to be too many people involved in such a conspiracy and it would for sure leak out. However, when Chelsea Manning released, the Iraq war logs, apparently up to 1 million people in the American Defense Forces had access to those files for years. And it took one brave person for that to leak eventually after many, many years. So if 1 million people can have access to such files and that never getting out, what the odds of smaller or more tightly kept conspiracies ever breaking out are like almost virtually impossible. So like, what do you make of people who say that, no, if there was a legitimate government conspiracy to do X, Y, Z, it would get out? Do you believe that that's a legitimate claim, that government conspiracies will inevitably leak?
I think so. I think there's that old cypherpunk phrase that information wants to be free. And, I really believe that, eventually this stuff, information will come out, will eventually come out. But that's, the WikiLeaks white paper was looking at these conspiracies of governance, and how do we increase the secrecy cost of these conspiracies so that they begin to fall apart, and those conspiracies between government or government, corporate, and media. How do you go after those? And that was the WikiLeaks white paper, and discussing that problem and increasing the security cost on those. The secrecy cost. And then WikiLeaks was the answer to that, was, okay, we're going to create this leaking platform that's going to be a magnet for leaks, and that will increase the secrecy cost on these conspiracies, which will make them more inefficient, and eventually they'll fall apart. So I think WikiLeaks sort of achieved that, and you can see, if you track from 2010 when these leaks came out, it's this gradual over time of the, trust in media just falling. Like you say, people like yourself, the curtain was lifted. Mm-hmm. People could see that it was complete and utter bullshit what we were being fed for years and years and years. And we had the documents. We had the physical documents in front of us, thanks to WikiLeaks, that we could hold them up and say, hang on, these journalists, these reporters, they're acting in their own interest, and they're spinning stories. This is what actually happened. And so then you can see the distrust in media, and we're at this point where we are now, where it becomes harder and harder to spin narrative. And so these conspiracies in government are getting harder and harder to do what they want, to run their conspiracy. So I think WikiLeaks has sort of had its moment in history and really kicked off this thing that motivated you. But I think there are courageous people out there. I have faith, right? I have faith in humanity, that there are these courageous leakers out there. There are the Chelsea Mannings, the Edward Snowdens. We haven't seen a big data leak for some time, but I believe that we will see more. There will be more, as people are, particularly at the moment. I think there's this deep revulsion that people have inside themselves about what they're seeing take place in the Middle East or in other wars around the world. And that revulsion, would be the same revulsion that Chelsea Manning felt when she watched that collateral murder video. And that will lead to these courageous acts happening. And so I've started a foundation, right, called the Information Rights Project.